Let's take a look at the gap analysis tool on Onefile. The gap analysis tool is used to help learners identify areas where they have gaps in the assessments which they have completed. So generally speaking, if you're using Onefile, you're completing a vocational qualification. Typically these qualifications have a list of competencies which you need to demonstrate. And generally speaking, if it's a skills competency, you want at least 2 counts of evidence for each competency. And if it's a knowledge competency, then you want the 1 count of evidence or 1 assessment mapped against that knowledge competency. And so the gap analysis tool, you can use this to identify which competencies that you've covered with the minimum requirements for the assessments and which you still have to complete. So if you're nearing the end of your qualification, it might be useful to run this, find where the gaps are, so you can fill those gaps with assessments. So to get to your gap analysis tool, you can find it on your main navigation bar on the left-hand side on Onefile. Alternatively, you can go to your home page, scroll down and select the gap analysis tool. You may find it under a progress bar or grouping of options. Bring you to this page. On here you then need to select the competencies which you want to look at. Now by default it's got not completed. So if you were to click apply without changing this, it would only show you the competencies which you have not completed. And if you're far through your program, it probably wouldn't show you very much. So you may find it useful then to change it to show all, and that will then show you all of the competencies which make up your qualification. Now this particular learner is completing the Project Management Level 4 apprenticeship, and therefore the competencies on this portfolio are related to that. So the first unit is the knowledge competencies for that apprenticeship standard, and we can see here we've got the competencies here and the third column here. Next to that we've got the supporting evidence column. So what this is saying is that for this first competency, there is 3 pieces of evidence that have been mapped against this and approved. Because it's got a solid line around it, that means it's been approved and signed off. Okay? So for professional discussion 1, test your understanding 12, and work-based evidence 11, those 3 assessments have been mapped and approved against this competency. Because it's a knowledge competency, you only really need 1 piece of evidence to fully close off that competency. You can have more, but you need a minimum of 1. You can see there that is the letter C in a green box, and if you scroll up, you can see the key. And the key there says that if it's completed, so if it's a C, that means counting towards progress. In other words, completed. If it's got a P with an orange box, that means that progress is pending. So that means it has been covered by a learning activity, but it hasn't been signed. In other words, you're working on the assessment, or you've completed it, you've sent it to your tutor or your skills coach, they have yet to review it and sign it off. That would be a P with a sort of yellow or orange outline. If it's got the letter N with a red box around it, that means no progress, and that means there's been no, it doesn't count towards your progress for that competency or for that unit. And if it's got an X with a black box, that means it's not required. So with some qualifications, there's competencies that you don't have to complete, and if you don't have to complete it, it's indicated with that X with a black box around it. So you can see here that these knowledge competencies are completed. If you see a box that has a dashed outline around it instead of a solid outline, then this would indicate that the assessment has been worked on but not yet approved. That's all that means. So we scroll down, let's see if we can find some gaps. So you can see here TYU8, Test Understanding 8, is in progress, but it doesn't count towards the progress yet because it's not been signed off. And that's because, and you can tell this because it doesn't have that solid line around the box like the rest of them. Let's scroll down. So the knowledge, looks like, has been fully completed. Move on now to the skills units. We'll scroll further down here. We can see there's a lot of evidence already in this portfolio. But we can see here with quality management, with the quality management outcome, there is no evidence that's been mapped against it, and therefore it's shown as no progress. And that's essentially how you would use the gap analysis tool. You'd scroll down, you'd find where the gaps are, and then you'd make a note of it. And that means you'd want to think and plan out some assessments. So if you were doing this project management apprenticeship, You'll be thinking, well, when have I done quality management? If I've not done it, let's speak with my mentor, my tutor, my skills coach, and work out how I can gather evidence for this, plan it out. And then you want to do that task if you've not done it already, and then you want to evidence it in an assessment, and then you can upload it into Onefile. So that is essentially how you would be using this gap analysis tool. So once you've identified a gap, you can go into the assessments module, you can create an assessment, you can map it against this, and you can type in an outline in terms of what you're going to do, and then that will create the reminder on Onefile that that is the assessment which you would need to complete to finish off your qualification. And it's the same for the rest of the units and the rest of the competencies which make up your qualification. So it's a useful tool, particularly near the end of your apprenticeship or your qualification, to find out what gaps that you've got so you can fill them and complete your qualification.